Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon with Israeli News Live. It is March the 8th, 2025. Very powerful message today. The 7 Noahide Laws, just the facts. I want to get right into this. We're going to be looking at the facts on this here, especially seeing the Sanhedrin letter to Trump. You have been elected to fulfill a heavenly mission. They are calling on President Trump here in the Israel 365 news article here. Has published an open letter to President Donald Trump, blessing him for putting faith at the forefront by establishing a White House faith office. The Sanhedrin called on President to establish an international divine court for all nations. Well, interesting. He established a faith office, put Poway at the head of it, which kind of reminds me of Ahab and Jezebel. Remember, Jezebel was the neck that turned the head. And Ahab, God actually said that he would bring the judgment on Ahab's descendants rather than Ahab, because he began to repent for what had happened and what he allowed Jezebel to do. And don't forget, Jezebel had her own 400 prophets that served the goddess of Asherah. You know, it really is such a diabolical garbage there. And Paula White is really truly representing the Zionist false prophets of today. Think about it, right? It's really going to get serious here. Now, there are two places that we find these Noahide laws. One is the Talmud, which a lot of people are what they look at today here. I've got it open. 57a is where you find that at. A lot of places in there, but really the heart of it. When you hear in the Talmud, they talk about the Tanim. The Tanim are the rabbis from back in the days of Jesus. And that was put into a book called the Mishna Torah. And that's where we get the Law of Kings. And this is where we get the 7 Noahide Laws. This is truly the foundation of the 7 Noahide Laws. Not even the Talmud is. Okay? And when I say Talmud, I'm not talking about one little book that you can get on Amazon, the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud, right? Where they make it look like that's the Talmud. No. On my bookshelf right here, 15 books right here, including one on the shelf and one on my desk here that wouldn't fit here. 15 books, and I use the Sansino Talmud. My wife was the one that actually found this encyclopedia that we were able to purchase years ago so we could see the facts. This is the most accurate because it has in there things they've taken out because they don't want you to know what's written in that book, right? So anyway, so we will be getting into the Mishna Torah as well, and so that you can see these things for yourself and know what the facts are. And again, my wife, like I said, she's the one that really spearheaded this whole movement here. Here she's at June Nights back in 2021. Of course, we reloaded it in 2024. But especially going back even years ago, and again, this is on Rumble, on her Odysee channel, Israeli News Live, Dr. Lorraine Day and the passing of the Noahide Laws, the late Dr. Lorraine Day. What a precious lady that was right there. And she truly knew, because her husband was the late Congressman William Dunnemeyer, and going back, I forget what year it was, 1990 or 1991, they put that as Education Day, the public law, 102.14, I believe is what that was. And that was where she really was a big part in exposing that. In fact, she's the one that brought it to attention of her husband. And Dr. Lorraine Day was a trauma surgeon for the ER in California. Very, very outspoken lady, very wonderful lady there, much like my wife. Both of these ladies together really began to expose just how serious those Noahide laws are. Now, I'm going to start with, because we see, like I said, they asked Trump to set up an international divine court for all nations. I actually thought that, and I'm sure my wife was feeling the same way at the time, we thought that they were going to enact these laws in every nation around the world. But don't forget, they're wanting to make all humans on the earth global citizens. They're setting up a new world order. And this is something you got to pay close attention to. They're setting up a new world order. They're wanting to make you global citizens, having a new form of ID. And then if they make this an international divine court for all nations, then they would be able to bring it in without ever having to go through Congress or the Senate or anything else. They've already tricked you right into it. So they said to him, Oh gosh. May the Creator bless you and your nation. We extend our heartfelt gratitude for bringing faith to the forefront of American global culture by establishing the Faith Once office in the White House. This refers to President Trump announcing last week at the National Prayer Breakfast that he would create a White House faith office headed by Pastor Paula White. White is an outspoken supporter of Israel who has been at the forefront of advocating the Jewish state since October the 7th earlier last week. White met for 4 hours with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Now, remember, Paula White went and began to study with the rabbis. She's been trained in the Noahide laws now, so she's moving in that direction. Your recognition of importance of religion in the public life is a step toward restoring moral values and spiritual leadership in the world. The Sanhedrin then listed the universal moral code. The book of Genesis has a profound message of unity, a divine purpose for humanity through three fundamental principles: one God, for one first man, and one basic law. To establish, notice that, the universal principles of justice, Genesis 2:16. All right, so they really, they really work on trying to bring these 7 Noahide laws in to make it look like this is a very simple law. But what I want to warn you about is it's not just 7 laws. It's not, clearly not. And I'm going to have for you Rabbi Tovia Singer educate the class here today on giving us an idea of just how many laws really are there. There are 7 fundamental laws which mirror what somewhat look like the 10 Commandments. That's why everybody thinks, what's the big deal? There's a lot of people, very well-known pastors and YouTube personalities out there that are telling the world there's nothing wrong with the 7 Noahide laws. But let's listen to Rabbi Tovia Singer for the class today to tell you what these 7 Noahide laws really consist of.
The Noahide laws are called 7, but really there are nearly 100 of such laws. But there are 7 major categories. But what does it mean, Noahide laws? So
there you have it. Thank you, Rabbi Singer, which Scripture does say, call no man rabbi. But I'm just doing this more as a formality in this case here. For that matter, maybe the word pastor should be thrown in there as well, right? So at any rate, we go back to the Talmud, and this is in the Sanhedrin 57a. And like I said, it's not just the one book, it's 15 or so of those. I have the Sanhedrin 57a here, and here we have both English and the Hebrew from Sepharia, where they publish this as well. By the way, it's funny. I was going through YouTube or Twitter actually, trying to find some more of these videos on Rabbi Mizrachi, where he really blasts this, right? They're beginning to scrub his videos off of Twitter. So it's very important we capture as much information as we possibly can. In the Sanhedrin, they don't use the word goyim. They actually use the word heathen is executed for the violation of 3 precepts. You're going to see that here in just a moment here. So, in fact, let me just find that here. We'll start with that there because there's so many that we could use. Here it is right here. Rabbi Yosef says, they say in the study hall that a descendant of Noah is executed for transgressing 3 mitzvot, which are represented by the letters Gimel, Shin, Resh, and in a mnemonic device for the forbidden sexual relations, for bloodshed, and for blessing, i.e. cursing the name of God. Okay? So this is what they say there, descendants of Noah. And I'll just use here, but I can refer back to this here in just a little bit here. You have constantly, though, what you're going to see in the Talmud over and over and over. Here, like Rabbi Sheshet objects to this statement, granted a descendant of Noah is executed for bloodshed, as it is written, one who sheds the blood of man, by man his blood shall be shed. Genesis 9:6. But with regard to those other prohibitions, from where do the sages derive that the descendant of Noah who transgresses them is executed? All right, so they're getting into the debate about the execution. But what I want to bring to your attention, they're quoting Genesis 9:6, that when man sheds man's blood, he's executed. Just above, though, If you go a little further up, let's see, here we go here. In Genesis 9:4, 2 verses above that, it says the prohibition against eating a limb from a living animal is stated in the Torah as it is written. Only flesh with its life, which is blood, you shall not eat. I.e., it is prohibited to eat the flesh while the animal that comes from it is still alive. And how do the other Tanim being the rabbis of Jesus' day, interpret this verse? In their opinion, that verse comes to permit eating a limb from that verse comes to permit eating a limb from living creeping animals. This prohibition does not apply to creeping animals. All right. In other words, like if it's a crab, if it's a lobster, if it's a cockroach, cricket, those you can rip his leg off and eat his leg. Okay, that's what they're trying to say. But it's the mere incontinuity between Genesis 9:4 and Genesis 9:6 that kind of blows me away. And this is a little side note, really, is all it is. If you go to Genesis to begin with, it says in Genesis 4, Akbesha, benefesho demolo ta'achlu, okay? Only the flesh, in the soul of its blood, you don't eat his, you don't eat this flesh of, it's kind of like worded, kind of like a little twisted wording there as far as English would read it. For me, it's easy, I understand it. In other words, any flesh that has a soul, you don't eat that, you don't eat it. That's what it says. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast will I require, and at the hand of man, even at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of a man. Who sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of God made he man. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what God is saying there to Moses right after the flood. What people forget is before the flood, what were the Nephilim doing? They were cannibalists. It says they sinned against the animals, and they sinned against man, and they devoured man as well. So God was dealing with a different situation to begin with. He's referring back to what happened before the flood. And people don't seem to get that. I'm not talking about current standards of today. I'm just telling you it's not what they're claiming that to be. But nonetheless, that's where they get this crazy Talmudic ideas. But let's go further down, though. All right, let's get past some of that. And I really want you just to see this here. A descendant of Noah is executed for transgressing any of the 7 Noahide mitzvot, or the 7 Noahide laws. He's executed for any of those that he transgresses. He's executed. That's what you need to see. Okay? Now, let's move forward. I don't want to waste much time there because Mishna Torah is where we really want to bring this out. Now, this was the resolution, Public Law 102-14, March 20th, 1991, that Congress did. And by the way, it was done by what? I think it was unanimous consent. I think there was only 2 or 3 people there. They did it like in the middle of the night when everybody had been dismissed, and they snuck that in there. But notice what it says here in number 2. This is the part that's underlined by the person that put this together. Whereas these ethical values, principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization when they were known as the 7 Noahide Laws. I don't know of any time in the bedrock of society that we ever have any evidence where they were known as the 7 Noahide Laws. But that is where the revolution was done at. And of course, they're doing it through education. Now, they just do it through education the way they're doing it here. And we thought they were going to try to institute this as a law of the United States, but they're going to make it an international law. This is why, by the way, the ICC court found Netanyahu guilty of violating or war crimes for the murder and genocide of the Palestinian people, and rightfully so. But then what did Trump do? Put sanctions on the ICC. Just like Nikki Haley went against the United Nations years ago, right? So all these things are being done, set up to be able to set your new global system, this new world order. Even remember what Putin said? We need a new world order with a new set of just laws. I wish I'd have put that in here, but I forgot to bring that out. Now, so they're setting the world up for this. And they're going to get rid of the Sanhedrin. Or excuse me, not Sanhedrin, but they're going to get rid of the United Nations and the ICC, and they're going to replace it with the Sanhedrin. Listen a little bit to what my wife says here about the 7 Noahide laws there at June Nights.
You need to read this again. The 3 intellectual attributes are associated with the Jewish people who provide the legal and spiritual interpretation of the 7 laws to the descendants of Noah. Descendants of Noah is you, the Goyim, the Gentiles. They have what kind of rights? Legal rights and spiritual rights to interpret these 7 laws, nice sounding laws, to you. Right? Now, something that maybe you didn't catch. Do you know what Sefirot is? No, right? Okay. This is what I told you in the morning session. That because you don't understand how Jews think and what they teach, sometimes it sounds so innocent and people are so happy to be on a friend bridges with them. But once you learn what is it they really mean, then you find out you have been deceived. Okay. The 3 intellectual attributes are associated with the Jewish people. The highest Sefirot, the ones they are divided into 3. You see in the beginning, attributes: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. In Hebrew, chokhmah, binah, and da'at. These 3 are the Jewish people. They have the knowledge, the understanding, and they're intellectually higher than Gentiles. This is why the interpretation lies with them. They're the ones who are going to decide how are the 7 laws interpreted for you. Okay?
You really need to look at this video. I will include this one and as well as her interview with Dr. Lorraine Day in the comments below for you. Let's move on though. All right. Now, also too, in the website Mizrachi.org, not just 7 Noahide mitzvot, an interview with Rabbi Ori Shariki, but it says here in Parashat Noach, Hashem commands Noach and his children to fulfill certain commandments known as the 7 Noahide mitzvot. Rav Ori Sharik, however, explains that these 7 mitzvot are just the beginning. The larger goal, he says, is to glorify the name of Hashem in the world and transmit Judaism's universal message to all nations. Keep in mind, I'm just throwing some little keys out there for you, right? Here we have here, this was the Poway Rabbi. By the way, he was convicted for fraud not long after he spoke at the United Nations, right? Or maybe it was before that, I'm not sure now, but he ends up speaking here wanting a Noahide law to be put into place at the United Nations. Listen.
And the Rebbe pleaded, if only the United Nations will go back to the basics and empower their nation to adopt the 7 Noahide laws, then this world would be a very different world, and perhaps we wouldn't have lost 150 million lives that we have lost in the last 200 years. So I ask every nation that's here, everyone that's listening, consider taking the 7 Noahide laws back to the basics and apply it to real daily life, and we will see a world difference.
One thing I would say there, you know, when you're planning on executing for every one of their, as Rabbi Tovia Singer said, 100 laws there, yeah, you probably going to definitely see a difference. So, as I mentioned to you, Nikki Haley to be the honorary president of the Organization of the 70 Nations, that was what they were pushing for, especially after her address here to the United Nations. Let's listen to just briefly what she says here.
To its shame, the United Nations has long been a hostile place for the state of Israel. Both the current and the previous Secretary Generals have objected to the UN's disproportionate focus on Israel. It's a wrong that undermines the credibility of this institution, and that in turn is harmful for the entire world. I've often wondered why, in the face of such hostility, Israel has chosen to remain a member of this body. And then I remember that Israel has chosen to remain in this institution because it's important to stand up for yourself. Israel must stand up for its own survival as a nation.
And so Nikki Haley definitely doesn't like the United Nations. They're going to replace this eventually. That's going to happen. Rabbi Mizrachi, here he is right here on the 7 Noahide laws. Let's listen to a little bit of what he says. What he says about the Noahide laws.
6 billion idol worshippers who makes God angry every second of their life. Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Tibet, Nepal, Thailand, so many. India alone is 500 million. China is 2 billion. So many, 2 billion Christians, which are idol worshippers. Between Chinese, Hindus, Buddhists, and Christian, at least 6.5 billion people are idol worshippers that according to the Torah do not have the right to live. Idol worshipper goy, it's death penalty. Not.
There you go. There you go. You have it right there. So I wanted you to be able to see that for yourself. And here we have, this is Ronald Reagan when he was signing that first part of the Public Law 102 into the public law there of the United States. Listen to that.
On which the movement is based, wisdom and reverence are not just desirable, but necessary to the very survival of civilization. Now we shall proclaim this day Education Day. And please give my warmest regards to the Rebbe on this his 86th birthday. Thank you very much.
There you have it there, Ronald Reagan, when he was doing, every president, including Donald Trump, who's also visited Rabbi Menachem Schneerson's gravesite as well, has done that continually. Anyway, Noahide, who singles out in the of his, let's see, I want to bring out, let me see where I've got this at, because I've got them marked here in the Mishna Torah there. That's where, let me just go ahead and show you this real quick, though, because that's what's very important. A Noahide who transgresses these 7 commandments shall be executed by decapitation. This is in the Mishnah Torah, Kings and Wars 9. And by the way, this is from what they call the Tanim. This is what the Talmud references the Tanim, which are the rabbis from the time of Jesus and what they wrote there. A Noahide is executed on the basis of the testimony of one witness and the verdict of a single judge. No warning is required. Relatives may serve as witnesses. However, a woman may not serve as a witness or a judge for them. But when you go back up in here, and I don't even know if, I still got some of these highlighted in here for you. And again, you're seeing them as they're going along. Prohibition against the worship of false gods, prohibition against cursing God, prohibition against murder, the prohibition against incest and adultery, prohibition against theft. There's a lot of subcategories in these laws, and that's why in the Mishneh Torah, this is extremely long. Let's see, but it just goes on and on and on and on. But let me pull back down to where I got some of these highlighted starting off at. Moses only gave the Torah and the mitzvot. Sorry, here I wanted to be able to bring out something else in there. as an inheritance to Israel, as Deuteronomy 33:4 states, the Torah, the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, and all those who desire to convert from among the other nations, as Numbers 15:15 states, the convert shall be the same as you. However, someone who does not desire to accept the Torah mitzvot should not be forced to. By the same regard, Moses was commanded by the Almighty to compel all the inhabitants of the world to accept the commandments given to Noah's descendants. If one does not accept these commandments, he should be executed. There you go. And you're going to see that over and over. Anyone who accepts upon himself the fulfillment of these 7 mitzvot and is precise in their observance is considered one of the pious among the Gentiles, or as they call it, the righteous of the nations. However, if he fulfills them out of intellectual conviction, he is not a resident alien, nor of the pious among the Gentiles, nor their wise men. So therefore he can't live in the land of Israel, if that be the case. Genesis 9:4 states, nevertheless you may not eat the flesh with its life, which is its blood. Thus it's therefore are the 7 mitzvot. It goes into the Noahide who worships false god is liable to provided he worships them in an accepted manner. Notice that. A Noahide who worships false god is liable provided he worship them in an accepted manner. A Noahide is executed for every type of foreign worship which a Jewish court would consider worthy of capital punishment. However, a Noahide is not executed for a type of foreign worship which a Jewish court would not deem worthy of capital punishment. Think about this, right? All these executions. One should be executed if he killed a pursuer when he should. When could he have saved the later potential victims by maintaining one of the pursuer's limbs? These laws do not apply with regards to a Jew. In other words, if the guy is after you to kill you and you shoot the guy and he dies, you're going to die. You're supposed to shoot him in the leg or his arm, nowhere else. He is liable for relations with a male, whether a minor or an adult, and whether an animal, whether young or old. In the latter instance, the Noahide alone is executed and not the animal. We are only commanded to kill an animal which with a Jew engaged in relations. Well, that's a guy. Why you had to kill the animal? Because the Jewish guy had sex with it, right? I mean, that's so sick. These laws. A Noahide is not executed for adultery with a colleague's wife unless they engage in relations in the normal manner after she had engaged in relations with her husband at least once. This is hysterical. Oh gosh. You know, and by the way, this just goes on and on. Similarly, a Gentile engages in relations with a Jewish maiden who has been consecrated as stoned to death because of her as the law regarding Jews. These are sub-laws under the 7 laws of Noah, by the way. And I'm just skipping over so many of those, right? So many. See, Noahide is liable for stealing an object worth less than a pruta, which is like a penny. Thus, if one Noahide stole an object worth less than a pruta, another Noahide stole it from him, they are both executed because of it. All right, let's make sure we get this. Well, it didn't. Hang on, let me. It's like nuts, right? The nuttiest laws you could ever imagine. It goes into all the sub-laws of, Noahide because of the prohibition against a limb from a living creature. It really begins to break it down. No one who transgresses these 7 commandments shall be executed by decapitation. For this reason, all inhabitants of Shechem were obligated to die. Shechem kidnapped. They observed and were aware of his deeds, but did not judge him. Now, I'll correct that for you too, though. The reason why Abraham was angry about killing all the residents of Shechem is because they had agreed to circumcision. That brought them under the Jewish law and the Jewish covenant. And that's exactly what God says in the book of Numbers with Moses. As the congregation shall there be one statute both for you. One statute, not two, not 7 laws for the Jews and 10 laws for the Jews, or the 613 mitzvot for them. It says, for as for the congregation there shall be one statute both for you and for the stranger that sojourneth with you, a statute for ever throughout your generations, as you so shall the stranger be before the Lord. One law, one ordinance shall be for you, shall be both for you and for the stranger that sojourneth with you. There's not to be a difference between the laws. So the Mishnah and the Talmud is completely false. And they're adjudicating these 7 laws, as they call them, of Noah. What a garbage. And by the way, but they don't worry. The neck, Jezebel, that turns the head of the president there, Ahab here, listen to what he has to say.
This evil anti-Semitic attack is an assault on all of us. It's an assault on humanity. It will require all of us working together to extract the hateful poison of anti-Semitism from our world. This was an anti-Semitic attack at its worst. The scourge of anti-Semitism cannot be ignored, cannot be tolerated, and it cannot be allowed to continue. We can't allow it to continue. It must be confronted and condemned everywhere it rears its very ugly head. We must stand with our Jewish brothers and sisters to defeat anti-Semitism and vanquish the forces of hate. That's what it is. Through the centuries, the Jews have endured terrible persecution, and you know that. We've all read it, we've studied it. They've gone through a lot. And those seeking their destruction, we will seek their destruction. And when you have crimes like this...
You know, when I see the people cheer like that, it makes me think of what Jesus must have went through. When they called on his death and the release of Barabbas the murderer, how they cheered when Pilate said that.
Whether it's this one or another one on another group, we have to bring back the death penalty. They have to pay the ultimate price. They have to pay the ultimate price. They can't do this. They can't do this to our country. We must draw a line in the sand and say very strongly, never again.
So, Noahide laws are definitely coming. It's just a matter of time. This here is where my wife and I were on with Mike Adams. Just play a little clip here for you.
If we see the full implementation of the Noahide laws in America, wouldn't that mean in a practical sense that people who quote certain passages of the Bible, especially in the New Testament, would be arrested and imprisoned in America?
Yes.
You would be killed for that.
Well,
you could be killed for it.
Could be, yes. Yeah. Absolutely, you would. I also found another video here a little earlier there. This is going back, as I said to you, 6 years ago. Beware of Noahide laws. And again, I'll put these in the description below for you. We're coming to a very serious time, friends. Let's listen also again to Rabbi Mizrachi.
He was afraid of them, that there's something much worse will happen. But from here we learn that the Gentiles must make a court and police and force the rules. If they don't do it, all of them deserve execution. That's what the Torah says. Because remember, every one of the 7 laws of Noah, it's death penalty. All of them.
Here again, this is Rabbi Mizrachi in China about a year ago. Listen to what he says here.
Hasidei umot ha'olam, the righteous goyim. How you become a righteous goy? First, you have to keep the 7 laws that Hashem told Noah after the flood 4,200 years ago. When the world had only 8 members, Noah and his wife, their 3 sons and their 3 daughters, Hashem told Noah 1 mitzvah. Where did he get the other 6? From Adam. There were 6 mitzvot before, he added ever minachai. Now it became 7. But since Hashem repeated it to Noah, we called it after the last event, not the first event. Why we don't call it the 6 laws of Adam and the 1 law of Noah? First, it makes it more complicated. Second, since Hashem repeated it to Noah, the last event is more substantial than the first one. For instance, when we have the first destruction of the temple and the second.
So the thing is, they keep making these references like Noah wrote these, spoke about 7 laws of Noah. There's no such thing, for one, okay? Secondly, but remember what he said in this video here, if they don't make the courts of justice, they're to kill all the Gentiles because you have violated one of the 7 laws of Noah. So things are getting pretty doggone weird. And it comes back to what we know. I saw thrones. They that sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. That's a prophecy that they're going to set up an international court. And they're going to bring about the death penalty of those people that stand for Jesus Christ. It's coming. It's just a matter of time. Let me play a little clip here as well.
A Reformed synagogue or a church? Church is officially a place of idol worshiping. A place of... What's worse? Really, you have to know. What's worse? A Reformed temple or a church? Which place Hashem hates more? Irul. Reformed synagogue is worse than a church. If you are forced to enter one of those 2 places, Reformed synagogue or a church is not as bad. Both of them is a sin. But a Reformed synagogue to step inside is, why? I'll tell you why. Christians are idol worshippers, most of them not intentionally, out of foolishness, out of ignorance. They brainwashed them with the stupid idea of the God have a son, and he came and had relationship with a married woman and made her pregnant, and this son will be a special hero, and he's the son of God. And I don't know where was the head of these Christians when they heard that story.
So here, and this is a warning to Reformed Jews. Rabbi Mizrachi said it's worse for Jews to go into a Reformed synagogue than it is a church. And they consider the Gentiles idol worshipers, although in ignorance, so they're going to give you a chance to convert to the 7 Noahide laws or be executed. So you will have your day to have your chance. This is, though, to give you the facts on the Noahide laws, and there are so many more. There's so many more amazing people out there, including Rick Wiles, Chuck Baldwin, the list could go on and on and on. People that are now, that have for years have been bringing this out. Chuck going back to 2019. We had Chuck on before. And actually, I think Chuck came on we had done this with Chuck, and then he brought it out himself as well on the Noahide laws. But when we first had Chuck on the Noahide laws, he was just starting to educate himself on it before he came onto our channel there. So since then, Chuck has certainly weighed in on this subject as well. Also, Chuck was a former presidential candidate, so he's very well known across this nation. And but anyway, I just wanted to share these things with you. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Consider supporting our broadcast, especially our Patreon channel. I promised you a video on Patreon. I've not done it yet. Now I have 2 of them I've got to get done, and both of these are extremely powerful. The second one that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be talking about the cause of the storms that are happening on this earth, the earthquakes. And oddly enough, even though we look at Planet X and things like that, I think there's even a worse situation that is causing the calamities that are happening on the earth at a magnitude and a level that we've never even considered before. That's going on patreon.com/Israeli News Live. Thank you for your support, and God bless you.